It's time to down tools for a bit. Welcome to the Tool Shed, the influential podcast for anyone and everyone involved in the building industry. Here's your host, Mick Hawes.
Hey folks, welcome to another episode of the Tool Shed. In this episode, I'm speaking to Steve Chandler. He's a multi-generation, third generation, I think, property developer. He's got over 40 years of experience, and I'm going to be tapping into his wealth of knowledge and experience to share with the listener about the value, but also the nuances and the things that you really need to know about property developing. One of the reasons is that in my journey working with builders, a number of them have thought that they can get into property developing as a good way to make a quick dollar. It hasn't worked out that way. Can be a good way to lose money if you don't know what you're doing. So we're going to be speaking to the expert about that. Before we get started, just want to remind you about the Builder Scorecard. Click the link in the description, take the scorecard and find out how you score in the four main areas of your building business. Immediately you will get a score through the email, but you'll also receive a custom PDF explaining what you might be able to do to improve those scores based on the score you get in each of those areas. So it's a really cool way to identify what you need to be working on in your business now rather than later. And when you find that real big issue, the roadblock issue, you'll find when you fix it, a whole bunch of other issues will disappear quite quickly at the same time. So it's a really good investment of your time. So jump in and do the Builder Scorecard. Steve, welcome to the show. You've got the Property Development Institute there behind you. Also have another company called Lefter. I want to find out, well, I guess not everything about you because we won't have that amount of tape. Not that I'm using tape, but that's just old habits die hard. How are you? Where are you? How did you get started in this space of property development and advice?
One question at a time. How am I? I'm bloody marvellous. And that's one of the things about life. Every morning when you wake up, you got to appreciate you're getting another go at it. And
absolutely,
I'm very happy about that. Where am I? In beautiful downtown Sydney, Australia. Currently in my office in Potts Point, which is just on the city fringe on the eastern suburbs of Sydney. And how did I get started was really quite simple. My mouth was faster than my brain when I was a teenager, and I got turfed out of school. And I decided that I was going to sit at home and drink my dad's beer and sit by the pool and enjoy my life. But Dad had other ideas, and he talked to a mate of his who was a senior guy in a building company, and he said, "Hey, you're going to work on Monday. You're an apprentice carpenter." And I go, "Oh, okay." Outdoors, physical stuff. I was a football player and all that sort of stuff, so I was really keen. I thought, yeah, great. I had a different hairdo back then too, by the way. And there it is. I started swinging a hammer and absolutely loved it. It was just awesome, absolutely awesome. So that's the answer to your first three questions.
Yeah, brilliant. It seems that there must have been a bit of that going on back in those generations, because I left school in grade 10 on the Friday, and my dad that night said, "There's an electrician coming over to give you a job tonight. If you don't take it, you'll be working for me." And he was a commercial builder. And I thought, oh, well, I'm going to become an electrician then. It was kind of decided for us.
Yes.
This is what I really want to unpack. This is what I'm excited about today, is the journey from builder and swinging a hammer to property developing. And the reason I want to unpack it is, as I said in the intro, I have experienced many builders along the journey thinking because they can kind of build a structure, a home, or whatever it is, at a wholesale price, they'll be able to make money out of it. And I can't tell you how many times I've witnessed that not working. Sometimes in an unsatisfactory manner. Sometimes it's business ending. So I really want to tap into your experience, and we want to put a bunch of stuff into the conversation about what people need to consider when they're property developing, particularly if they're a builder.
Yep.
So what are the things that you see? What are the mistakes that are made when people sort of look at the romantic version of property developing?
Well, see, everybody knows that property developers just make millions, and we all have private jets, have Lamborghinis and Ferraris, and we live in the French Riviera on a cliff in a castle. So it's very much a fallacy. We work hard for our money, and we take different risks to what a builder does. And I like to sort of give people a comparison. Like a builder is a service provider to a developer, and if a builder thinks, mate, I'm smarter than that guy, how come he's making all the money and I'm, really struggling and, having to swing a hammer every day of the week? Well, the reason he's doing that is because he's worked out that he doesn't want to be a builder anymore, and he's learned what he needs to know. He's learned how to think completely differently to a builder. Because if you contemplate in a very simple sort of way, a builder has to price a job, has to win a job, and when you win that job, you've got a fixed price and a fixed time. And all you have to do is deliver it within that time frame. If you get some trade wins, you make a bit more money than what your profit margin was. But, we all know there's ups and downs and you don't always, make trade wins. But, if you can get it across the line for your original budget, then you make your original profit. Fantastic, as long as your client pays you, of course. From a developer's perspective, here I am. I'll give you a classic example. I'm doing a 60-plus unit development at the moment, just right at the front end. Right? I don't know how much money I'm going to get out of it. I don't know exactly what my revenue is going to be because I don't know how many apartments I'm actually going to put in it yet. And yet I've committed to this project. I don't know what my construction cost will be. I don't know what my architects, my engineers, all this sort of stuff. I don't know yet. And the thing is, I don't know what my overall time frame is because I'm yet to prepare a DA and get it into council. So I live in a world of complete and utter uncertainty. And if you look at what Donald Trump's doing at the moment with his tariffs, we're heading into unknown territory economically. And I'm looking at something myself that won't be finished for 3 to 4 years. And I don't know what the economy is going to look like at that point in time and whether or not I'm going to get the revenue out of my development that I might think I am. Whereas as a builder, if you've signed a contract, you're going to get progress claims over the next 12, 18 months, however long your project is, and you have relative certainty about your income in that time frame. So a developer takes a completely different risk. And as a developer, our mind has to be on the big picture. So I'm more worried about Donald Trump and Ukraine and the Middle East, what's happening in Israel and Gaza. I'm more worried about all of that than I am about, construction prices are going to go up by 3 or 4% this year. That's small fry risk to me, whereas what can happen overseas is massive risk.
Yeah. Hey, I hope you're enjoying the podcast. We're always trying to bring you information that's going to make your life as a builder much easier. So give us a thumbs up and make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss the next episode. Yeah, it's interesting that you talk about that. I'm just putting together a bunch of videos and what have you about exactly that, Donald Trump's tariffs and what's going on and how it potentially will affect the building industry, and we need to think a little bit differently just at the minute and get our head out of the boat, so to speak, and look around and see what's going on the race course. And so can you expand on that? But I don't know where expand's the right word, because you've talked about the global issues of Gaza and Trump and all of that sort of stuff. But even just locally, as far as who your client might be and where the property is and who it might appeal to and what would be what problem are you solving to attract the right person? What are those sorts of things that you need to contemplate before you start a property development? Because I think that from a builder's perspective, they go, there's a block of land, I'll bang a house on it and sell it, and I'll go from wholesale or retail. And sometimes it works, but often it doesn't. What are the things you got to consider?
Well, first and foremost, as a developer, we look at the holistic, the whole thing, and we've got to contemplate in any product that we create, who's going to buy it. So revenue is where we start. What product is in demand? So do we, if you're talking about medium density residential, developers, they've got to look at who's going to buy the end product. What does that product look like? Is there more demand for 2-bedders or 3-bedders? And if there's demand for 2-bedders, is that 2-bedroom with a second bathroom? And is it 85 square metres internal, or is it 90 square metres internal? Is it 1 car space or 2? The same thing if a builder is looking at doing a house. The question is, where is it in demand? What's the product that the market is demanding? Like when we renovate our homes, we renovate it for us. But when you're building for someone else for profit, you're building for that person that you don't know who they are.
Yeah.
So the first thing you've got to do is find out who they are. What do they want? And when you know what they're wanting in a product and what they're willing to pay for it, then you can start looking at, well, I could buy this, rundown house in this particular suburb, and if I spend, $500,000 on it, whatever it might be, it'll elevate it in value by, $1 million or $1 million plus. And you go, yep, okay, I can make a decent profit out of doing that project. So first and foremost, you have to understand the market. What is your target market for your product, and will you achieve that value on completion of your project?
I'm just at the moment, my wife and I are looking into investing in residential property for rental, that sort of stuff, and we're using a buyer's agent, and we've had a number of meetings with them, and just the detail they go into, the data collection about the state, then the region, and then the street, and then the type of house in the whatever street, and what's going on with the local economy, and it just blows me away, the depth of and breadth of the data that they go into to make a buying decision, and it's quite incredible and eye-opening. Where do you go to get that information? Have you got special platforms, or what's the process for you to decide what sort of development am I going to get involved in next? What makes sense?
So, for me, I read a lot. I watch a lot of, reports, etc. I'm in the paper all the time. The Financial Review, Australian Financial Review. That's for me the Bible of what's happening in the corporate world and what government's doing, and that drives development decisions, if you like, because government spends money on infrastructure, and recently in New South Wales there's been an amount of rezoning around a number of train stations, and the idea is to increase density around the government's heavy infrastructure, which was paid for 100 plus years ago. So they're saying, okay, let's add density around the station. So I'll look at that. If government's spending money on it, but before I go out and buy a property, which I don't do anyway, I option or get control of it somehow. without spending the money on it. I do end up buying it before we start construction, but basically we try and get control. Before I do that, I'm going to do a high-level feasibility on an assumed development site. So I'll just randomly pick a house in an area that is appropriate for what I want to do, and I'll run a concept development on that property and see if it makes money based on my understanding of what the market needs. So I'll listen to government. I'll look at the newspapers. I'll read stuff. CoreLogic is full of information. There's a platform called, I think it's population.id, something of that nature. They've got lots and lots of demographic information. If you want the raw information without too much commentary, you can go to the Australian Bureau of Statistics and you look at trends. All we're trying to do is find a trend where population is increasing in a particular area, or if prices are continuing to grow in an area. But if prices are growing, we want to know why are prices growing, because that root cause of the increase in value may stop, and then no more increase in value, and I may have invested in something that is going to have no capital growth. So there's so many different things that we've got to look at to form a view. RP data is an amazing source of information. I also use a platform called Archistar. I find that very, very helpful. But all of these things cost money. Lots of these things, everything's a subscription service. Yeah, there's plenty of information that's for free out there, but you have to spend so much time trying to find it. Whereas these subscription services, they provide us with that information at a cost, but it's all together in one location.
Yeah. And I suspect the other thing to consider is, doing a bit of reading about you and your journey. You've got over 40 years of experience, and you've got the data in front of you, and looking at the trends and gathering the information. There's a fair bit to be said about the level of experience that the eyes have that are looking at that data. Like a person fairly new to it looking at that data will see one thing, and you'll probably see something completely different. So there's plenty of
this will glaze over, and they'll go, "Oh my God, what does this all mean?" And sometimes I get that. I've been around for a long time, but still, I'm learning all the time, and that's the beauty of property development. Is there's no such thing as like, hey, I've been around for 45 years, and therefore I must know everything. Like, rubbish. Planning controls are changing very regularly. So I don't know the new planning controls everywhere all the time. So I've got to learn that. The economy is changing. Like on a daily basis, you just don't know what new thing is going to pop up. So there's stuff that happens all the time, and as a developer, we have to form a view. I suppose if you think of it this way, a lot of people, you go to the pub, you have a beer with your mates, and someone will say something about a football team, and it's yeah, and we'll all agree, and that's right, that sort of thing. But as a developer, that's the last thing that we can do. We have to form our own view and go, no, I don't agree with that at all, because and come up with a reason why we form a different view. We must have an opinion, because if you look at someone, let's say there's a heap of duplexes being developed in a suburb. So, builders are buying properties, knocking them down and building, duplexes. You go, fantastic. I should go and do duplexes there as well because there's a heap of duplexes. Well, no. You shouldn't. You've got to go and find out whether it's profitable first and who's buying them.
Yeah.
And, are the builders actually making money, or are the builders doing this to create their own job because there's not enough work around, and they're doing it for themselves, and they're not looking to make a development profit. They just want to make a building profit. what is it? And I had that was a classic that happened with a young guy that I was mentoring up on the Sunshine Coast. He was looking at all these duplexes going, oh, mate, I've got to go and build duplexes. I've got to go build duplexes. And I've gone, yeah. Are they profitable? And he did his research and he's gone, no. It ends up they were builders creating their own work for themselves and selling the duplexes, for, not a building margin effectively, not a developer's margin.
Yeah. Yeah, there's lots of traps to fall into. I just want to switch gears for a minute and get your thoughts on working with builders and how we might be able to help builders refine their approach when working with a developer. Because one of the things that we've covered a lot in Black Belt in our coaching group is that there are some members that work more often than not with an architect. And so the architect becomes the client rather than the client become the client, and you've got to figure out what the fears, frustrations, wants and aspirations, concerns and priorities of the architect are to be able to work with them. Because there's a lot of shit that happens because the architects and the builders don't communicate effectively. They almost work against each other. I'm sure the same thing in some areas happens with a developer. You'll hear, developers all that they don't give a shit about this, that, and the other. They just give us stuff about the bottom line. And of course, everyone has to give us stuff about the bottom line, but I don't buy into that myself because even the developer is a human. Like you're a skin bag full of emotions like everybody else, and you have pride and ego and all of those sorts of things. And working together with somebody in a pleasant, constructive way that you can enjoy and be proud of and make money has got to be better than working in an environment that you hate and stressed and it's frustrating and you're making money. The former is better, I think.
I would absolutely prefer to work with, for example, an architect that might be good at their job that I can get along with than an architect who's the best architect in the world that I cannot get along with. An architect, from a development perspective, I must have a team of people around me that I can work with, number one, that I trust and that can understand everything that I do is around meeting my customers' needs. So the end purchaser.
Yep.
That's what I'm here for, is to meet their need. And I need to make a profit out of this. And I understand that their businesses, the architects, the engineers, the builders, etc., they need to make a profit too. Because if we're all making money, no one's going to complain. And, having come out of the building industry, having been involved in a lot of litigation, through that employment, having been involved in litigation directly in my businesses, mate, the last thing you want is to get into a litigated issue. So, I try to make sure that anyone I work with, we've got that nice, easy to get along with sort of relationship where, you can speak to me honestly. You can tell me, I'm a dickhead, whatever you want to call me. Where, okay, I'm a bag of skin with emotions. I might get upset at that. But the thing is, I'm not going to sack someone or knock their block off or anything like that. I want to be able to have disagreements with people and then get on with it. And, that's something that's really important. You want a team of people working for you who aren't scared to express their opinion, because you're employing them for their opinions about the design of your building or the construction of it. That's what they're there for. And this is something else about development that's different from building. As a developer, I am a conductor of an orchestra. I've got a million different people that are out there that play their instruments, the architects and all the different engineers and, the builder, etc. And I wave my little magic wand and I tell everybody to do something at a particular time. Now, if they all do it the way they're supposed to do it, it makes beautiful music off it. right? But if they don't, then you're going to, it's horrible.
Mhm.
So you must have a team that you can work with. You must have a team that if you growl at them, they're not going to sulk. They're going to growl back at you. When you do something wrong, you want them to chip you as well.
Yeah.
So you need to have a team that it's each way, because when you can get along with people, when you can have a disagreement with them, that's awesome. Absolutely awesome. I love to be able to have disagreements with people, and it works to our advantage. I'll give you a classic example. Architect I was working with, just renovating a house. It was a 3-story house. I wanted to put the stairs in a particular location. I had the architect on site. We're talking about where I wanted to put it, and he's gone, "Oh, look, Steve, it's better off over here," And I've gone, "Why?" 40 minutes, for 40 minutes, literally 40 minutes, I argued with him about the location of the stairs. And at the end of that 40 minutes, he's gone, "Okay, all right, I give up. No, okay, you can have your stairs where you want it." And I go, no, we'll put them where you want it. And he's gone, are you for real? He said, "Seriously, why did you waste my time?" And I said, "Mate, I wanted to be certain that you, as the designer, were absolutely certain that that is the right place to put them." I said, I've come out of the building industry. I'm not a designer. It doesn't matter to me. I'll do whatever's cheapest and fastest. But if you're saying to me that's where it needs to go to get the best benefit of the space in this property, then we're going to put it there. And mate, he was 100% right. If I had done what I wanted, it would have been bloody awful. But he did a great job of doing that. So I want to be able to push people and get that response. And look, that particular thing was 15 years ago, and I'm working with him again now. So it's not as if he's ran away from me and said, "I never want to work for that bastard again." So there's mutual respect about what we do and why we do it.
Yeah, perfect. So for the builders listening, you've obviously worked with lots of different builders over your journey in property developing. I'm sure that you've seen patterns or commonalities of builder behaviour or builders' approach to doing projects that give you the shits, that they don't need to be that way. And if they change their approach or change their attitude to certain things, everybody would win and it would go a little smoother. For the benefit of the builders listening that might be working with developers in the future, can you let us in on what some of those things might be from your perspective? What can they just improve or stop doing?
Yeah, there's a few little things, right? And look, having been a builder, it's easy for me to understand the trials and tribulations that a builder's feeling.
Yeah.
But challenging your client about what they want is okay.
Yep.
But never argue with them.
Cool.
If your client says, "I want this," you go, "Okay, look, can you help me better explain to me why you want that? Because I might come up with a better way of doing it that's more cost effective for you." And you're challenging them, and you're not saying, "Oh, bloody hell, I'm not going to do that."
Yeah.
What you do is you're making them explain. Now, two things that happens when someone explains, they'll feed the reasoning. And when you understand what somebody is trying to achieve, it's so much easier to say, "Yep, okay, I'll do that."
Yes.
So that will relieve you of a lot of pressure, just sort of very delicately, asking them to explain their reasoning behind making a particular decision or asking for something. Then, if you just arced up with them and said, "Oh, I'm not going to do that. Look, I've already, built that wall," or whatever, whatever it might be, as soon as you arc up, what are they going to think you are?
Yeah.
You're a pain, you're a problem, and the last thing you want to be is a problem. You should be their solution. Their problem is they didn't have a property and they want this thing built. You are the solution to their problem. I can do it for you, let me do it for you. And the less problem you are, the more changes that they make, the more certainty that you have of being paid in a timely manner. And, you're going to get paid sooner. And to me, just not arguing is number one. Getting paid, putting your claims in. Don't put in bullshit claims. Don't claim you're 90% complete on something if you're only 75. I understand, builders want to become cash flow positive. I get all that. But if you push it too far and your client goes, are you kidding me? What's going on? Then they're going to be in the defensive with you. And again, it's going to be hard to get paid. And they're going to argue about all those things. So, pick your fights is the other one. If they ask for a small variation, just do it and don't charge them. Rats and mice stuff. Just it's all part of the friendly service.
Yeah.
That type of thing. Because what you want, every client that you have, if you think about your business, the business of being a builder, is the easiest person to get the next job from or through is the person you've just done a good job for.
Yeah.
Because they're going to go, I want that builder again. Or they're going to say to their friends, look at the job this builder did for me. He was awesome. And that's word of mouth. And that is cheaper than advertising anywhere and hoping someone is looking for a builder. Because what do? The first time, if you weren't a builder and you want to do a renovation, the first thing you do is you want to, who's the architect? I want an architect. So you'll ask around, and nowadays you'll jump on social media to find that architect, right? But if a friend says, I found this builder did my job, he did a great job, have a talk to him first, he'll give you an idea of what it might cost. That is really a good way of doing it, because for you, you're already in the front door. You can then get to recommend the architect, and that'll be an architect that you as the builder have worked with often, and that architect will be appreciative of that, so that the next time he's got a job or she's got a job, they've got a job, now I use the right word, next time they've got a project, at least you're going to be on the tender list. So, I'm big on relationships, massive on relationships, but from that perspective, just because a builder might have done a great job doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to get the next project on a silver platter. But what they are guaranteed of is being on the tender list.
Yeah,
and that's better than not being on the list. So you've got to form a view. So to me, as a client, I got no problem in having a disagreement, arguing, and working through an issue. But rats and mice variations are really upsetting. They should just be, okay, we'll change that for you. We just did you a favour. Great, no problem, no charge for that. Those are little things, and challenging why your client wants to do something, but challenging it in a nice way is definitely a really good way of building a relationship with them and trying to add value to their decision-making process. Because if you're early on in the project and they want to change something and you go, look, can you give me an understanding of what you're trying to do? I might be able to help with that. That early on, they're going to come to you with all the other stuff throughout the project. And you might be sitting there going, oh my God, not more and more and more of this. But every time they change something, you've got the opportunity of making a margin. And if you're easy to deal with, they're not going to question your margin.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all about the trust. It's all about the relationship. Yeah. So you have got two businesses, or wear two hats. You've got the Lefter Group, which you're a CEO of. You've also got the Institute of Property Development. And in my mind, what I've found in the last little while, because over the last 10 or so years, we've bought and sold some properties and done okay, quite well out of it. But then we went and started talking to people who really know their shit. and I found out that I actually know nothing, and it was all pure arse.
Yep.
you get some good results and you start to think that was good judgment, and it wasn't at all. It was just absolute luck of the draw. And I'm thinking even from a builder's point of view, they can build their own development, but with either of your organisations, is that somewhere that a builder can tap into to learn the art of more profitable development rather than just trying to do it themselves? Because they're builders. I'm a coach. I'm not a property guru. I just asked it for a few, but I was absolutely blessed.
Yep. Yeah, the market can be kind to us, and when it's kind to us, we become awesome business people, right? We just got it right. It's just awesome. When you're actually an awesome business person is when you don't go bust during a downturn, because you've planned properly. So realistically, so if you sort of look at my career, I had 20 years in construction. I didn't want to be the developer. But during my 20 years, and that was in the larger scale stuff, I finished my building career, if you like, working as a project manager in a second tier building company. And, so we were doing larger scale projects. Now, whilst I was doing all that, my wife and I, we were doing buy, renovate, sells all the time. Every, 2 to 5 years, we were rolling over properties and, doing projects, etc. So we were punching that out, and we were very, very successful at it. And the thing is, when you do it with your own home, the beauty of your own home is if the market's not good enough at the time that you want to sell, don't.
Just live in it.
18 months to 2 years, and the market will always recover. And then you can make the big bucks, capital gains tax free. So that's one thing when you do it in your own home, and that's a good common sense way of doing it. When you do it for profit, now you're talking about, different things that you have to learn. And, before you start trying to do property development outside of your own home, so literally buying a property to do something to it for profit, you have to learn property development. I can't decide tomorrow or today that tomorrow I'm going to be a doctor. I've got to go and learn that. Same thing with a dentist. A dentist can't say that tomorrow they're going to be a doctor, even though they've both got medical practice, medical education. It's different. Building and development are different careers.
Yep.
A builder is very detailed focus, and a developer is big picture. And one of the hardest things for me as a former builder is when I go onto a building site, I'm straight down the rabbit hole. I'm what about this? So I've got to sort of stay away from building sites because I'm horrendous at what I see. It's like, oh no, I'd never do it like that. But hey, it's not me who's doing it. So I might question it and let the builder deal with that. But fundamentally, as a developer, we've got to have the big picture. So, who's going to buy our product? What are they going to pay for it? How long is it going to take to sell? What's the finishes that need to go in it? What size are the rooms? Do I need 2 bathrooms? Do I need 1 bathroom? Do I need 1 car parking space? Do I need 2? Is it internal garage? Can it be tandem? All these things which, people just don't think about, they're critical to the outcome of your revenue.
Yes.
Okay. And then once you know what you have to deliver in product for that revenue, then you got to look at it and say, well, can I actually design it, acquire the land and build it for substantially less than that? And then even then you've got to contemplate, the equity. How much money do you actually have to have of your own to put in for, the project? How much you have to finance? Where are you going to get that finance from? And, financiers, property development finance is completely different to home ownership. And a lot of people don't realise that. It's like, don't you have to pay a mortgage to your project? No, we don't pay a mortgage. technically we do. We borrow money for a fixed term, and generally it's going to be something like 6 months longer than what the build project end date is. And, we pay interest, but we borrow the interest from the lender and we pay interest on interest. So we capitalize the interest. So instead of actually having to get money out of my pocket every month to pay a mortgage, it's just rolled into the loan. So it's all, calculated out in our profit margin, in our feasibility. And if we can make appropriate profit levels, then great, we'll go ahead and do that project. But every cost has to be accounted for. So, if you think of I don't know, let's picture an apartment. Let's say you did some research and a renovated 1-bedroom apartment in a particular area is selling for, say, $1.5 million, and you can buy an unrenovated one, up the road, same market, for $1 million. And you go, okay, if we renovate this $1 million apartment, it's going to be worth 1.5. So straight away in your head, $500,000. Well, that's not what you're going to make. You've got stamp duty on your purchase. So, that's going to be, 4% or something like that. You will have done your due diligence. You might have had a look at some, if it's a house, you would have had a look at the planning scheme and had a look at what you can and can't do. But let's just say it's an apartment. So you're going to do that. So straight away, if stamp duty was 4%, that's $40,000 that's come off the 500. So, okay, so you're only going to make 460. Well, hang on a minute. When you sell that property at 1.5 million, you're going to pay your real estate agent and your marketing fees. So let's just call that 2%. So there's 30 grand that comes off just from the purchase and then the sale. So you've just lost 70,000 of that 500. So now you're down to 430,000. And you go, okay, what's it going to cost to renovate? Well, now you need to know, do you need an architect? Are you proposing to knock down walls? Are you gutting something? What designers do you need? And what are they going to cost you? So, right, okay. Do you need an authority approval? Do you need, in New South Wales, a complying development certificate, for example? Or do you have to get a DA? Or is it exempt development that you don't need an approval for? So let's just say it's exempt. So you might set aside a few grand just for maybe an architect, a designer of some description, just to help you out if you're not good at designing stuff yourself. So great, there's another few grand. And then you go, okay, what's the renovation cost? Kitchen, bathroom. Are you going to use a builder? So is a builder going to give you a quote to do the whole lot? Or if you are the builder, how much is it going to cost? Are you going to allocate your own time into the project to pay yourself a wage out of the project? What are those renovation costs going to be? Finance, you've got to buy it, so you're going to have to put your own money in, and then you're going to borrow the balance of it. So what's the loan application fee? What's that going to be? What are the interest rates? How much are the monthly mortgage payments? Does the bank need to get a valuation on the property before they lend you money? All those things, all these little rats and mice numbers. I'll tell you what, a couple thousand here, a couple thousand there, a few more here, a few more there, builds up, and suddenly there's not much money left. And then let's say you'd allowed 6 months to get the project done. What if it took you 9 months because, you picked up another job somewhere and had to go and get that started, so you couldn't keep both going at the same time? What if you had trouble getting some materials? What if someone stuffed something up or stuffed you around, right, by not showing up multiple times, and then you had to find someone else? Whatever that might be, let's say it takes longer. And then what if it doesn't sell? What about that? So it's going to take longer and you're going to drop the price. So all of these things, you've got to have calculated all of that out and go, at the end of all of those costs with all of those contingency items, right, are you going to make a reasonable profit? And, the question is, if you were going to make, let's say, $300,000 out of that. So it's a $1.5 million project. That's the revenue. Because it's old stock that's been renovated, there's no GST you have to remit to the government. But if you did duplexes, you've got the GST that you have to remit on the sale prices. So things like that, you've got to, mate, wow, how do you deal with that? But, $300,000 on 1.5 million is 20%. So you go, yeah, that's pretty good. But what did it actually cost you? And you go, oh, okay. It cost me 1.2. So you're making 300,000 on 1.2 million of cost, which is 25%. Yeah, okay, that's 25% return on cost. That's a good margin. And then you go, well, hang on. From the day I started to the day I finished was 12 months. I put, let's say you had to put $500,000 in. So you put $500,000 in for a year, and you made the $300,000 profit on your $500,000.
Yeah.
So that's 60%. You actually made 60% on your money that you put into that deal. And where else do you make 60%? You don't. You put your money in the bank, and you're not even equaling inflation. So you're losing money. So there is money to be made in property development if you get your numbers right. And you must know your numbers before you commit to that project. Because when you commit to that project, if it doesn't make money, mate, where does it come out of? Your pocket.
Yeah.
So it is important to understand how to do that, where those numbers come from, and we all have rose-coloured glasses when it comes to feasibility studies. People go, oh, I know this is going to be an awesome thing. It's going to make a huge profit, huge profit. My gut's telling me, and I go, yeah, look, okay, I've got a bit of a gut, and it can tell me a lot because of its size. But mate, I can tell you, your gut is going to diminish in size dramatically if you get the numbers wrong, because you're not going to be able to feed yourself with the money that you lose. So if you've got a gut feeling that something's good, go and prove it by doing the numbers.
Yeah.
And, I get, because of my business, and I've been around for a while, I get a lot of people come to me, oh, I've got this awesome site. It's going to make a fortune. I go, show me the feasibility. And mate, there is no feasibility. No one's done a feasibility study. So I just go to them, well, until you've done your feasibility study, don't waste my time, because you're just going to lose a heap of money. Just do your feasibility. That's it. Number one, do your feasibility, find out how much money you can make. And it's like, well, how do you do one? Now we're talking. This is education. Like on this banner behind me, property development is a learned skill. You're not born with it. Everybody has to learn whatever it is they do for a living, whether you're a builder. I mean, mate, I started swinging a hammer. I had to learn building, just like I had to learn property development. We all must learn education, and it's a different thought process. Building is a completely different thought process to development. When I was a builder, I thought we were king shit, and without us, you can't have your project. We are so important. Then I became a developer and found out how wrong I was, because a builder is just a service provider, and if you don't do it, I'll get someone else to. Yeah. There's no big deal. So I used to think that we were so important. We are important as builders because we deliver that product, but it doesn't make us so important that the developer can't just find someone else to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. So somebody listening to this going, I've been thinking about it, but I'm kind of convinced through listening to this conversation that I might need to know more. Where do they go? What's the first point of contact to reach out to you guys to start to learn a bit more about this?
Well, mate, the best thing that anyone can do is just free resources. Property Development Institute is obviously my business, and this is a plug, obviously. Property Development.
That's what we're here for. Plug away.
Yeah, that's it. Visit our website, propertydevelopmentinstitute.com. The .au was too expensive for us, so we just went to .com. All right. And, visit the website. There's free downloads of ebooks, and they're not those sales pitch ones, they're actually books, right? So, that I've written, there's one for people who are starting from scratch called Property Development for Beginners. Pretty easy sort of title.
Yep.
Then, there's a intermediate version called, Property Development Warrior, and that's a really good book, particularly, I suppose, for builders, if you like, who are looking for a house to renovate for profit. It's a really good sort of like 150-page guide, I suppose you could call it. And then for the advanced level, we've got a 38-step guide to the property development process. And that guide is there more so for people who want to do, six-pack of townhouses and something of that nature, a little bit bigger than startup. But the fundamental, even if you're getting started, download the guide to the property development process, because if nothing else, you'll see what the 38 steps are in how development works. So you might not understand it at first. You might go, oh my God, this is overwhelming. And that's why I sort of say don't do it. But, then the other thing is jump on the website, not the website, YouTube. YouTube's a great place to learn everything. But the only thing I will tell you about, when you get out there and start looking at stuff, just be aware that there's a lot of training places that sell you the dream, not what you need to know.
Yep.
And because I'm a developer and I've come out of building, and Property Development Institute it's my golf, it's my passion. It's where I want to help people learn. I put it out there very different. I'm not going to talk to you about your Ferraris and your private jets and stuff like that. That's not what I'm about. What I'm about is if I can scare you enough about property development that you don't want to do it, then I've been successful in saving you a bucket load of money. But if what I say to you in what I present is something that you go, geez, I'd like to know more, then you're on the right path, because you're going to learn the stuff that's really important. And mate, the whole thing about property development is not to lose money, first and foremost. Like asset protection. A lot of people just don't understand asset protection. Builders trade in their own name. And if you trade in your own name and you do something and you get sued, you can lose everything. So, understanding, property developers, the ones in the biggest scale of things, we don't develop in our own name. We've got separate entities, companies and trusts and things like that. And we structure, and I own nothing in my own name except for, some clothes, a bit of furniture in the house, and a big debt in a car, and that's deliberate. Assets are owned by other entities. So, if anything ever happened and, I got sued, no one's going to sue me, because there's no point. There's no value in suing me. So you've got to learn about, asset protection. That's business 101. So we teach a little bit of that as well, to try and help people understand what I'm doing. And I share with people what I'm doing. And, I'm not a financial advisor. I'm not here to give anyone financial advice in any way, shape or form, but I'm more than happy to share what I do and what other people in our industry do. Then you take that over and, go and talk to your accountant and work out a strategy for yourself and see what they can come up for you to help you protect your assets, keeping in mind lenders always want to secure their loans to something that's got an asset attached to it. So the challenges are unreal. It's just unreal. Awesome. Yeah. It's awesome. I reckon everyone should be a property developer. It's great.
Yeah. You're obviously very passionate about it. I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on to the podcast, putting the time aside, sharing your experience and your knowledge. We'll definitely put the website link to the Institute up in the description, and I encourage people, particularly builders. That was my main purpose for the conversation, is to prevent builders from going into that romantic property development place thinking they can make a quick buck, because there's so much to think about, as you've alluded to, and just want them to reach out and learn more about it before they leap off the cliff.
Well, Mick, there is a contact us page on the website. So anyone who wants to contact me, even from the website, there's links to book a meeting with me if you want, a free meeting, 15-minute meeting, just a video chat to talk about it. I'm passionate about property development. If anyone wants to talk about it, mate, I'll talk till the cows come home, as you can obviously tell.
Unlike today. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm very quiet today. You'd hate to see me if I'd had a couple of beers beforehand.
Fired up. Mate, thank you very much for being on the show. It's been marvellous. Absolute pleasure and very, very informative. So that's it, folks, for this episode. Very informative. I hope it got you thinking, particularly if you're a builder, because I have seen it happen so many times. It's been a really fast way of losing money, not a fast way of making money when you make all of those errors. And as Steve has just outlined, there is lots to consider. It's not impossible. Find someone who's passionate, just like Steve. There'll be a link to the Property Development Institute in the description. So just click on that, reach out, have a conversation with Steve, and get the good oil as to what you might need to do if you want to get into property investing. So we'll be back with another episode of the Tool Shed before you know it. Before we get out of here, just want to remind you of hitting the link, doing the Builder's Scorecard, get your scores, plus some suggestions on how to improve your scores in your inbox pretty much straight away. A tailored PDF that'll give you some guides as to what to do based on the scores that you got. So it's a good way to make fast progress in the right direction. We will be back before you know it with another episode of the Tool Shed podcast. I'm Mick Hawes from Builders Business Black Belt. That is all. I'm out. Bye for now.
You've been listening to the Tool Shed. If this podcast struck a chord with you, make sure you spread the word by sharing it with your mates in the building industry. We love your help to make the building industry better for everyone involved.